Hello students, welcome to this part of my lecture series on Essentials of XML. It feels so special to be able to meet you all virtually at this critical time where a face-to-face meeting is a bit far from the reality due to social distancing. We have adapted a blended learning approach for the semester. Having said that, you will be watching many pre-recorded videos like the one that you are watching now. So, we as teachers will be guiding you, will be teaching you remotely. So don't worry. We will also have plenty of live interactive sessions along with the pre-recorded videos. You will be required to attend the live interactive sessions after watching the pre-recorded video. Ideally, if you attend the live interactive sessions after watching pre-recorded videos, you will have maximum benefits. In live interactive sessions, we will have discussions, clarifications, guided practices, solving exercises and problems. So we can use our maximum time to help a self-assessment and enhance your understanding. So all you need to do is watch the pre-recorded videos before you come to the live interactive sessions. Well, let us see the prerequisite for this course. Knowledge of web technology and knowledge of Java will be an advantage here. Well, there are certain outcomes which requires the knowledge of PHP also. So, with this little introduction, let's get started. Let us see first the software requirement for this course. Because I told you, this is a practical course. A Visual Studio would be ideally preferable software for you. Also, a Notepad++ is a fair choice. And again, for certain outcomes in this course, you would need a web server development environment. There are many open sources available in the internet, like the ECPHP or a WAMP server will be sufficient for that purpose. Well, let us start our lecture for the day. Welcome again. Here is the outcome that we are going to learn today, which explains the functions and the features of XML. In detail, if you want to see, here is the list of the things for today. Number one, we will see what an XML is. Number two, we will also see why it is important to us. What makes XML indispensable. And then, it sounds a lot like HTML. So let us also see the differences between XML and HTML. And then let us see what constitutes an XML document. What are its main components? Then with some examples, we will wrap up the session. So point number one, what is an XML? XML is an extensible markup language. By its name, it is easy for you to understand. But how you can define it? Indeed, XML is a data storage document. It focuses on the data storage, not on its presentation. And it is a standard given by the World Wide Web Consortium, which standardizes all the different web technologies across the world. And also, XML is not only for exchanging information. A very important point to note here is that XML follows strict syntax rules, and hence it also enables us to create applications for smaller devices like mobile phones or portable digital assistants. So this is how I would like to introduce what an XML is. Let us see next the key features of XML, or what makes XML so special. Point number one, XML is a widely accepted standard across the world, recommended by W3C. So applications of different natures, applications running on different platforms can use XML for data interchange. And then if you see, XML focuses more on its content, meaning it takes care of the storage. And then XML is extensible. XML is self-describing. When I say self-describing, XML, understanding XML doesn't require any different software's knowledge or expertise to read it. And XML is universal. When I say that, you understand that it has no problems with internationalization. And then XML is totally independent because it is going to be an important technology used in the web applications. Applications running on different servers and different platforms would be able to parse, read the XML documents. So XML has to be independent from platforms. And then XML provides a robust and durable format for data storage also. And if you look at the other key features, it is easily transformable, it is a future-oriented technology, and it is text-oriented. Well, you can also see that it is case-sensitive. Well, case sensitivity is a nature of popular programming languages. So we find that also as a key feature of XML. Alright, so let us continue to the next thing, which is the difference between XML and HTML. So when I say XML, it sounds a lot like HTML, but it's totally different from HTML. In XML, we focus more on the storage. XML takes care of data storage, not its presentation, whereas HTML's focus is more on the presentation. If you remember, you must have used lots of formatting tags in HTML to change the way your data or information appears in the browsers. And then if you look at the XML, totally extensible, you can generate your own tags, whereas in HTML, strictly not possible. You cannot have that liberty in HTML. You have a rich set of predefined tags, only that you can use, you cannot extend them. Whereas in HTML, if you see, it takes care of the presentation. There are plenty of tags available to change the way your data appears on the browser screen. And then if you take XML, it has got a greater capacity in terms of hypertext linking. But whereas in the HTML, you have a limited hypertext linking capacity. Now we will see examples of some XML applications. XML is being widely used across different areas, right from chemistry, wireless, mathematics, weather, security, e-commerce, and business rules. You can also find them being used in geography and human resource. The list is quite long. I have here given you a very short list. And when I say chemical markup language, it is very domain specific. For the domain chemistry, we generate a complete set of XML tags and elements with attributes to deal with all the chemical compounds and its reactions. Similarly, in the wireless application development environments, if you see, XML finds its use in developing protocols. So that's how in this list there are a lot more domain specific XML applications that are widely popular. And now let us see the different components of XML document. These are all the things that constitutes an XML document. It starts with the declaration, and then you will see plenty of elements which contains the data, and also elements can have attributes. Then, like any other programming languages, we have got a certain way to express comments, and of course we have got a CData section. Now let us see the statement that declares an XML document. Usually this would be the first line of any XML document, and the different characters that forms the declaration is given here one by one. It starts with the keyword XML with an angular bracket and a question mark, which just indicates that it is an XML declaration. And then you have got a version. The version is usually 1.0, which is not revised afterwards by the W3C. So it is always 1.0. And then you can see an attribute called a standalone. Standalone is a very special attribute. Usually for XML documents, to make them valid, we can have a document type definition or an XSD, a schema definition, a type definition document or a schema definition document. In such cases, these definition documents can be part of the XML, or it can be written outside as a separate entity, as a separate file, and then at the end of it we will close the declaration. So this is how we declare an XML document. And if you want to take a look at the different what you call encoding formats, there is a bit of a list given here. And when a declaration misses the encoding attribute, it takes ASCII standard as its default. And then you can see another example where a different encoding is also presented. Take a look at the screen for your first XML file, an example XML file. Its name is book.xml. So take a look at the extension also. All your XML files will have the extension .xml. And the first line is the declaration, and then you can see a plenty of elements. Normally in HTML, if you see a text in between a pair of angular brackets, you tend to call them as tags, whereas going forward we will call them as elements in XML. So there are plenty of elements, and you can also notice that all the elements have closing elements also, and in between the open and the close elements you have got data. Well, this is your first XML file that you come across. In the coming sessions you will create and process plenty of such XML files. And when we talk about the contents of the XML files, first is declaration, then elements. Element is the core of your XML document. Elements meaning in HTML you can compare it with tags. So elements are the ones that wrap the data or information in the XML. And then it has got an open element and a closed element. So closed elements will have a slash and the element name within the angular bracket. And any element name should begin with the alphabetic character. Of course, underscores is also okay. But no other special characters or numbers are allowed to start the element name. So it cannot contain any special character, please remember that. And of course, it is allowed to nest element names, but make sure that there is no overlapping. And there is something very special about this element is that any XML document should have only one root element. So there has to be only one root element for any XML file. So please remember this. And one more exception in element names, naming the element names. The sequence XML should not be used in forming the element names. So make sure that you never use the word XML while creating an element name. And your contents of an element can be text data, or it can be a mix of text as well as other elements, or it can be sometimes empty. So elements can have child elements, elements can be empty, and elements can have text data. This is what I would like to sum it up. Well, next interesting thing is attributes. So in any XML document, next to elements, you will see plenty of attributes. Attributes are not uncommon to you. In HTML, I am sure you must have learned plenty of attributes. For example, in an element called or in a tag for table, you definitely must have used the attribute border, color, spanning, call span or row span. Okay, maybe they are used in the TDs or TRs. And then in the tag for body, you must have used background, BG color. So all these things are attributes. Similarly, in XML also, we have the option, we have the freedom to create attributes. Like the elements, you must also take care of forming the attribute names. And more importantly, attributes in XML, the values of the attributes in XML should be enclosed by either single quotation marks or double quotation marks, without which it is invalid. So please remember that. And when I say attributes, it can take different values. It can take text, it can take numbers, it can take the ID of an element in the same XML, or it can sometimes take enumerated values. There are some attributes which will take a list of values. Say for example, there may be an element mark with an attribute grade. The grade can have A or B or C or D. So this is an example where an attribute takes a list of values. And then sometimes the attribute may take one of the IDs of a particular element. In such cases, we call them as ID refs, an attribute that takes ID refs as its values. And also it can take NM token, which is also a lot like list of values. And likewise, there are plenty of attribute types. In the coming practical sessions, when you start using it one by one, you will have a better understanding. Next is comments. Like any other language, in XML also, we have got comments. So, comments are sections that are ignored by any parser of a language. So, the information presented in the comment section is not for the computer but for the user. Well, the way the comments are generated in XML is a lot like HTML. So there is nothing new or challenging for you. And next, if you see, we have got something called the C data section. Of course, while while storing some data, if the data has plenty of symbols like less than, ampersand, which can create some ambiguity to the processor, to the parser while parsing the document. For that reason, we have got a C data section which can encompass all these information so that the parser knows that this is sort of information not to be parsed. And there is a very special way to include a C data section in the XML document, which is very neatly explained here. So take a look at the slide. You have got a less than symbol and exclamatory and a double square bracket with the keyword C data to start a C data section. If you write something in a C data section, it will be totally ignored by the parser. Well, next, let us take a look at something called entities. Entities are like constants in languages. It will be simply replaced by the intended meaning or description to it. They are used mainly in XML document to avoid ambiguity. For example, if you want to insert a data in an element which includes a less than symbol, this is impossible in XML document with the actual less than symbol. For that, we are provided with an entity by the name LT. So, the entity LT proceeding with an ampersand symbol, ending with a semicolon, will do the job for you. So, there are 5 entities given here. These are all very helpful in cases when you want to insert data that can create a little complication with the structure of XML. And then take a look at this particular slide. This is very important. We have a set of standards, we have a set of rules when we create XML. Only when you follow all these ethics to create the XML, we call them as a well-formed XML. So what are these general rules that you have to observe while creating an XML? Number 1, every open tag or element should have a closing tag. And nesting is allowed, whereas overlapping is dangerous. If you overlap, your XML will not be parsed. Your parser will throw error. It is not ignored. And if you plan to have attributes inside an element, you cannot have 2 attributes with the same name. Yeah, quite meaningful. And when you have markup characters, it must be properly specified, which means you can also have user defined entities. If you have entities, it should be properly specified. And above all, the last point, but it is not least, any XML document should have only one root element. If you have created an XML document and it follows all these rules, then I can qualify it as a very well formed XML. Well, students, we have come to the end of the lecture. So to recapitulate what we have seen today, number 1, we have seen the basics of XML, meaning what an XML file is actually and its functions. Then we have seen the uses of XML, what makes it so special and its purposes. Then we also have seen different applications of XML. Then we saw the different components of XML. Then or how to make an XML well formed, or what are the qualities of a well formed XML. Alright? So students, that's all what I have for you today, and please take a look at the screen. This is the plan that I have for the live interactive session. So make sure you watch the video until the end, and be prepared for all these activities. So see you in the live interactive session. Thanks very much.